You've invented robotics, be involved in your surgeries.
The ultra micro neurosurgery, now the exoscope neurosurgery is now getting popular. We describe something called hypervision, which means as soon as the CT is done, it is reconstructed in VR. It is injected to my exoscope space, registering into the patient's head. So which means that when I am doing my surgery, I know what is behind my tumor. I've always believed that my services cannot be paid for. If I ask, because I'm saving lives and there's no price for life.
How are you balancing between being a spiritual person and being a neurosurgeon?
You're giving your Kavachakundalas to Indra. So Karna said, Mother, if I lose, because I'm not good, not because of this Kavachakundala. So when you have supreme confidence that the universe guides you, then you don't need to be mean. When I die or when I vanish, it's just a ripple that happened in space-time and it just went off.
You're just making me feel like nothing at this point.
We'll talk a little bit about chakras. So for example, the first chakra is Mooladhara. So now Mooladhara is the chakra of lust. Mooladhara, unless you satisfy Mooladhara. You know, when you don't understand something, you try to explain it in a way that you understand, isn't it? So the brain is not really logical and not logical. It is just
So
that,
we're only talking physiological now.
I mean, if you ask me what is my perspective on the brain is a hardware and it's a receiver.
I must definitely tell you that this is one that I've been really looking forward to. I'm not only kicked, but also nervous today because we have Dr. Iype Cherian, who is a very, very, very special person that I met, guess where? On a flight to Delhi, and 2 hours just passed. He realized that I was into yoga while I was editing a little story to post on Instagram, while he was doing his deck, which was all about an operation that he was doing on a brain. And I was, for a second, taken aback, but more intrigued. And thankfully, I had this beautiful conversation with him. Neuroscience and spirituality. So interesting and so phenomenal that we really kept in touch. And he's here all the way from Karat, Maharashtra, to just be on my podcast. So welcoming Dr. Iype Cherian, who is a neurosurgeon, who is an educationalist, a researcher, and also a fitness enthusiast, an adventurer, and was also into off-roading. So many things that we're going to talk about his personal life and a lot about how the brain works. So I thank you so much with all my heart. I can only say that I'm very grateful today to have you on the show. Viewers, do you mind joining us in this lovely conversation today?
Thank you for the very kind introduction, Deepti. I'm very impressed to see the team, the studio, and the work that you've been doing. I always believe there's nothing like coincidence. Maybe sitting next to you on that flight got me to come here and share some things that I do with your team, which I find it's an honor for me.
So Iype, the first things first, right? There is a lot of correlation and interconnection between medicine, science, and spirituality. So how interconnectedness work? If one were to be a scientist and a spiritual person in parallel universes, how does this entire thing work?
It's very interesting that we have now digressed into something called medicine, something called spirituality, and something called science. About 5,000 years back, this was the same. The shamans, who were the religious leaders, were also the healers. And they also talked about astronomy. They talked about every other science. It is over the last 5,000 years, whether it is progress or regress, we have come to name things as medicine and then even compartmentalized it further into different branches of medicine. So much so that, an unlucky neurosurgeon like me wouldn't know how to treat, for example, a fracture. Probably going narrow and deep rather than shallow and wide has its advantages too. But then I believe we have become compartmentalized and religion has become a taboo word now. It's so sad, In my youth, when I was more of a rebel, I used to believe that every philosophy made into a religion murders the philosophy first. That was what my belief is. It hasn't changed much. Religion and spirituality, if you ask me, are very much part of healing. And if you separate them, we are losing the greater picture. We will go ahead and elaborate further. I mean, I know that I remember talking about chakras to you and you would be, what on earth would a neurosurgeon do with chakras?
I know that's exactly what got me interested in the way you looked at life. I think I should really ask you why you do what you do and why you believe in what you believe in. What makes you believe in spirituality as much as you believe in science?
A lot of people have very noble aspirations when they take up something like a profession of medicine. My only thing was I was not very clear as to what I should do. I loved physics. I was good at doing things with my hands. Some reason I was a freak of nature, so I started writing with my left hand and then I went on to right hand. I was good with writing with both hands. So when my dad's uncle, who was a neurosurgeon, Dr. Matai, he saw me and he told me that maybe neurosurgery is something that you would do well. And it stuck in my mind as a child. I thought, let's do neurosurgery. I didn't have any blooming idea about what neurosurgery was. When I was in medicine, I would go to the neurosurgery department. Dr. Jayakumar in Kottayam was the chief at that time. So I would go for his surgeries and all I was interested was in neurosurgery. The moment I finished, I asked people whether I could do a direct neurosurgery rather than wasting my time with general surgery. So there were 6 seats in India and one of them was in Vellore. So I went into 6-year course in neurosurgery. It was very tough because there was a hierarchy which I completely hate. But then that got us into 6 years in Vellore, got us into being very well trained. And then I started my journey with respect to fellowships and trainings in Japan, in the UK and at many places. So then I started my department in Nepal. I was there for 14 years. When I landed in Nepal, I called my dad's uncle and I asked him, it's like a cultural shock. So I had only 2 instruments, just a bipolar and a suction. So I asked him, I don't think I can do very much with it. So he told me, the founding fathers of neurosurgery did not even have a bipolar. So that's when I started thinking, doing neurosurgery in the very basic way. But by the time we were finished in Nepal, 14 years, we had an intraoperative 3 Tesla MR. No place in Europe had. That was how we finished in Nepal. But to start with, we had just a bipolar and suction. So I've seen the whole spectrum. Neurosurgery at present, operating about 50 years back, what you guys do with your cameras and, your VR and your programming, because neurosurgery still uses a pen field dissector, which is like a pen to dissect out a tumor. So I decided maybe we have to turn a leaf. So we started oldest surgery in neurosurgery, which is a trauma surgery, taking out a large bit of bone. They take it out and they keep it in your abdomen or they keep it in a bone bank or something. We realized in 2007 that this was not the correct way to go about. We started something called Cisternostomy. Today, there is a textbook from Thiem on Cisternostomy. We have 80 countries doing it. We have neurosurgeons from all over the world coming to us and getting trained in Cisternostomy. This is the first thing that we changed. Through Cisternostomy, we realized that cooling of the brain is a completely different thing. It's never been described. If I ask you a simple question as to how automobiles are cooled, you know about the radiators, right?
Yes.
So the brain is also cooled by a radiator. It's amazing. We are the first to describe it. If you look at, you have the frontal sinus, you have the maxillary sinus, you have the sphenoid sinus. So these sinuses are actually, let's say, a large room lined with wet cloth. The wet cloth is called the mucosa. And you have a small door going into them. So when you take a breath, what happens is the small door is open, so the breath passes through that corridor and then the breath comes in. So what's happening is it's evaporating. So it evaporates and loses the latent heat of evaporation. So 5 sinuses working together, you cool that area almost 4.5 degrees. And imagine the largest collection of cerebrospinal fluid, that is the fluid which is at the base of the brain, is sitting just in the anatomical center of these sinuses. So it's being cooled. Now, how does that cooled CSF get into the brain? You must understand that where that CSF is, it's called a cistern, and that is from where all the vessels go in. And these vessels are pulsating. And when the CSF is there, the cool CSF is there, and the vessels are pulsating, there is a space around these vessels. They're called Virchow-Robin spaces, and nobody knew what they were doing. I remember going to Paris for one of our courses, and then I went to Da Vinci's museum, and I saw Archimedes' screw. It is just a screw and a covering which you put into the river. You rotate the screw, water comes up. So in fact, if you look at it, the vessels are just pulsating and you have a space around them. So this cooled CSF is taken all over the brain. That's how the brain gets cooled. In fact, the brain uses 1/5 of your blood supply. Although it's so small, although it's only 1/70th or 1/60th of your weight, it uses 1/5 of your blood supply.
But tell me, just for a simple person, for a layman to understand, why is it important to cool the brain?
You know about the desktop computers and the SMPS fan. You know what's the best way to sabotage a computer? You take off this SMPS fan. The computer fails. The best computers in the world now are fluid cooled. So it's the same thing with the brain. The metabolic activity that the brain goes through is much, much more than any other organ. The cooling system is not working, happens in certain diseases like punch drunk. When you have a brain bleed, what happens is all these spaces get filled with heme.
Okay.
And the cooling in some spaces, they go away and you go crazy. You have rage, you have all kinds of, diseases happening.
Can also stress or sleeplessness cause that?
Yes, it can. So these are things which you're very interested in. What is happening during sleep? This is something that we have to understand. During sleep, the brain is getting cleaned.
Yes.
How cleaned? The Virchow-Robin spaces are there at, let us say, there is a neuron. So the Virchow-Robin spaces are, this around the vessels are going all the way up to the neuron, but not opening into the neuron. Now in the night, what happens is no voluntary brain activity. There are these gates called aquaporin 4. These gates open up and this CSF goes into the neuron. The neuron is already worked so much and accumulated chloride, ammonia, all those waste products. And I'm going to gather all that, clean the neuron, come back. This is what's happening in the sleep. You don't have sleep or you don't have cooling. What happens is the neuronal function really suffers.
But is there a way you have to sleep for it to happen?
They say left lateral position. It's the best when the cleaning happens the best.
So are you saying that people who sleep straight or on their right side?
Yeah, it's not the most effective clean the brain maybe. But what
so
they
you
find...
sleep on your left side?
No, I sleep prone. So there are very...
But how do you find out if your brain is getting cleaned?
If you feel fresh when you get up, you feel completely fresh and ready to face the world, that means you had a good sleep. But more than the sleep, it means that your brain's been cleaned.
Oh.
So
that's not the sleep. That's actually...
No, the sleep is just the way to get your brain to clean.
If I have slept, but I have not slept deep, let's say a REM,
rapid eye movement.
Yeah.
I would ask you to just focus on when you were sleeping, you had continuous, say 3 hours or 4 hours sleep rather than following the REM and REM cycle. So rapid eye movement and NREM, they're two different phases of sleep which slowly keep on changing. So what is important is uninterrupted sleep for about 3 hours. And when you do that, the glymphatic system, it cleans the brain completely out. All your chloride, ammonia, everything goes back into the glymphatic system. Presumably goes out through your urine the next day. That's how you clean. So rather than focus on the number of hours of sleep, I believe it's your quality of sleep. If you are better to have no sound, better to have no light, better to be in a particular temperature where it's not so cold but not so warm as well. So, and probably a proper bed if that is important.
As a neuroscientist, would you suggest magnesium, melatonin, or any of those supplements for people who can't get enough sleep?
You're feeling tired, then being unable to sleep. One of the major things that has contributed to this FOMO, the fear of missing out, and it is because social media creates the fear of missing out. So you don't see a like or you don't see somebody's commented. So you feel that you're missing out. You become so hooked to that, overriding your basic instincts, like basic things like sleep and other things. In your brain, if you are able to switch off for a particular time, saying that no phones. For example, I'm a surgeon, so it was difficult for me to switch off because I have a good team to deal with emergencies. After about 6 o'clock, I switch off, and that means I am off.
That suddenly brings me to your life. I mean, why are you living the way you're living? And I know you're living in a huge place in Kharad where you wanted to settle down. I want to first ask you why Kharad, of all the places, and why you homeschooling your children instead of sending them to school?
See, when you look at careers, you will understand that what you are doing doesn't really matter if you don't enjoy the journey. Most of the doctors think that I'll see OPD till 1 o'clock in the night and then I go operate and then I'll see. So they miss out on their children's lives, they miss out on everything. Their children also miss out on everything. And finally, the cycle continues because the child also does the same thing. So on the other hand, what we decided when I came back to India is that we wanted to be in a large farm with all the animals. I was not particular about children going to school. How many percentage of children going to school are successful? Do you know? If you take a rough figure, how many percentage of successful in the means, are they millionaires? They end up in a job which they adjust to because they don't have a choice.
I know a lot of my friends who are backbenchers who are successful.
Yeah. So success is not about money. It's about getting up in the morning and thinking, oh, I'm blessed to have this family, this house, this place, these dogs. Okay. Maybe small things, but this is what we wanted to focus on. So that's why many corporate hospitals I could have walked into, but then I realized that they're putting a collar on you. Once you are in it, then, human nature is whatever my suffering is, it's my suffering, so it's the best.
Are you saying that we get used to the pain?
Yeah. So this is like I always tell my residents who want to go to corporate hospitals, I tell them, if you have a fantastic living room and a bedroom and everything, and I ask you to sit in a public toilet, you will be riled at that concept first. But if I ask you to sit for 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, and on the 4th day, you'll start brushing your teeth in there. Because you get used to it. So this is what is driving people. I see people driving themselves towards complete quantum incoherence.
If I can interrupt for a second, that's one of the papers that you've published. So what quantum coherence actually mean?
Most of the birds, they can fly back to the same lake. How? So the only way you can explain it's quantum coupling, quantum coherence, quantum entanglement. These are the things that can explain this. Now they are slowly figuring out that photosynthesis is by quantum tunneling. Photosynthesis is so efficient that the only way you can explain it is by quantum tunneling. Quantum coherence is that stage where you're existing as a wave and a particle and both are in harmony. Actually, if you look at, I'll tell you a very simple example of how you are a wave. Now, let us say I take a magnification glass, look at you. First thing I'll see is cells, let's say 100 magnification. Go to 1000 magnification, you start seeing molecules. 10,000 with a scanning tunneling microscope, I see atoms. Let's say I go 1000 times more. I see subatomic particles, but then there's nothing else. You just see space and energy. At that point of magnification, I'm talking about 100,000 magnification. There's absolutely no difference between you and this room, you and entire Hyderabad, you and the world. It's just atoms.
But there is a difference between the frequency, the wavelength. No?
Carbon, phosphorus, hydrogen, oxygen, They are the same atoms that you see everywhere else. There's no frequency difference as well.
So what happens when I take alcohol? What happens?
The quantum level, nothing happens. Actually, it's like a
The
wave
energy
on the
remains
water.
the same.
No, it's like a wave on the water. You made a wave on the water. Does it stay? It doesn't. In quantum physics terms, what happens when I die or when I vanish? It's just a ripple that happened in space-time and it just went off.
You're just making me feel like nothing at this point.
It is actually, you are everything. That's what it comes to. When you understand that, when you go through these chakras and you understand, the first thing is when you feel that you are nothing, and then you feel that you are the universe, Tattvamasi.
But why do I connect so much with Shiva's energy?
Shiva actually means, if I say, Tumhare Siva, what does it mean?
Without.
Without. So Shiva is without. It's actual zero, not even space-time. So every temple in India has a Garbhagriha. That is where the Big Bang started from. So you look at space-time, so you had that seed and it started. What is before the seed? That is Shiva. Because he is before space-time, he pervades, he goes all through space-time. That's why Shiva doesn't have avatars. He pervades through, he has no time. But that's why it's
like
called
Interstellar?
Huh?
Like Interstellar movie?
Yeah, so Interstellar, one of the words for Shiva is Kala Bhairav, somebody who killed time. There's no time. In his presence, in Shiva's presence, there is no time. And when you are in his presence, then you forget all your cunningness, all your smartness. Why is he called, Shiva's name? Bholanath. What is Bhola?
Innocence.
More than innocent, stupid, silly, So, like a child. So, Shiva, the two biggest sins are guilt and shame.
So, what impact does guilt and shame have on the brain?
So, that's a prefrontal cortex. And you must be amazed to know that one guy got a Nobel Prize for disconnecting the prefrontal cortex. It's called a frontal lobotomy. He used to take an ice pick. The ice pick, it's like a small axe.
Yes.
He used to put in a small axe through the thinnest part of the bone, that is the orbital roof. He just make a sweep both sides. So the prefrontal lobe would be disconnected. And these patients, they were cured of depression, but the problem was they would be completely uninhibited. They would try and make love to a chair. They would try to pee on the public. They would keep on laughing.
Can I consciously make sure that my prefrontal cortex in place?
Yeah, so...
Is that meditation?
Yes, so when you meditate on Shiva, you must understand that, have you tried to picture Shiva? It's a massive human being, nothing at all. His hair is completely, he's never taken bath and he's always in a trance. He is dancing to the music of the universe. Shiva's principle is Nirlajjam Sarvam Sukhi, which means the one without shame is the happiest. Moment you start practicing shame and guilt, then your happiness, you are always trying to please, or you're trying to how to not step your foot on things which will create guilt and shame for you. Over 5,000 years, we have created morals to keep the society in check. What we have achieved is we have achieved children within prisons. This is why I thought my children shouldn't go to school.
The reason behind why you don't believe in the current education system in India, if you think it is flawed, then why is it flawed? And what is the potential of children who are being raised in farms and being homeschooled?
Our schooling is based on a principle of competition. So you're grading children. All of us are good at something. Let's say if you take a monkey, a whale, a shark, a lion, and say that you all climb this tree, depending on who climbs the best, that guy is an A grader, the whale will be lost, isn't it?
Yes.
So that's why in India you had schools where you would go to the teacher will kind of identify what you're good at. Sometimes you'll be a warrior, sometimes you'll be somebody dealing with economics. People are good at many things. It's just not right to classify them according to how good your marks are in the 10th standard based on an exam which is uniform. So that's what I don't believe in. I believe that the children should be left the way they want to grow. That's one of the reasons why we are schooling them this way. Another reason is when you are in competition, there is no place for mercy, kindness, and all the things that make up a person happy. If you're not kind, or if you're always into cutthroat competition, you develop an attitude that you should step on somebody to be on the top. It's not really required. All the exams, everything, they promote that feeling. So this is another reason why we didn't want to have them in school. That meanness and that competition spirit where somebody has to go down for you to come up, that has to go. Otherwise, we wanted them to understand what is the basis of living and the basis of happiness. I would very much like to discuss what are the levels of living in ancient India according to the chakras that...
Yes, I was coming there. My son goes to an international school. I think I'm fairly okay. Like, I do not have the bandwidth to homeschool him, and I'm quite busy doing my stuff as well. Doing pretty well, in terms of how there is no competition and there is no grading. They do not have exams, but they obviously have like sports and music and arts and equal amount of English and math as well.
Excellent. So a lot of people ask me, my girls would grow up to be illiterate. So that's not the case. So we put them into a place where they learn English, mathematics. In fact, one of our carekeepers, who was my old patient from Israel, he decided to stick with me. He decided not to go back to Israel. And he was the chief of the cultural divisions in a kibbutz. So he's very well aware of paintings, the masters, Renaissance, all that. So he teaches art with French, novels. So the girls read a lot, know enough mathematics. They do a lot of sports, they do riding. And my elder one, 11 years of old, she started doing off-roading with my monster jeeps. So I don't think anything is lost as such. The good thing is there is nothing limiting them. We don't have to wait for their holidays to go to some place.
Yes, yeah, that's nice,
We just have to decide, okay, we're going here, and they can always come and look at the lessons.
So Iype, why Karath? Why did you choose this place out of all the places, and why do you have this huge institute, if I may say, one of the best neuro surgeons who's into invention? You've invented robotics, be involved in your surgeries.
I've always believed that my services cannot be paid for. If I ask, because I'm saving lives and there's no price for life, my services should be available for everyone. Of course, to be sustainable, there has to be a payment. It should not be with my job as a surgeon. And I also wanted to do the very best in the world. We started Cisternostomy. Second thing we started was ultra micro neurosurgery. Micro neurosurgery is fairly common in the world, but we started operating at zooms of 60, 70. What it entailed was we could remove tumors, preserving most nerves that people wouldn't dream of.
So are you saying that other neurosurgeons who do not have this kind of an equipment will not be able to remove the tumor without removing a few nerves?
Yeah, I'm sure I'm stepping on a few nerves there, but then... But then, and people might think we are arrogant and we are saying, but I've been doing this many times. So
also, do you mind sharing who's we, like as a conglomerate? Or?
Yeah, so we, the ultra micro neurosurgery, now the exoscope neurosurgery is now getting popular. If you ask me, I started the first exoscope. I designed the first exoscope. 2014, wow. We went ahead. I was not happy with the zoom at all that I was getting, and it was not allowing me to see enough details. So I talked to many companies that I wanted to have much higher zoom, and it was not possible. So I talked to Zeiss, the main microscope making company. They retrofitted an old microscope part into my brand new microscope to make the zoom up to 40, which was what Frank told me was that it's the only microscope in the world with that kind of zoom. We operated with that for over 4 years, but even that was not enough for me. When you're doing very high-end neurosurgery, complications are, generally more than what a normal neurosurgeon does. That's one thing, but sometimes this tumor is impossible to be operated. It has to be radiated. For example, like in the cavernous sinus, which is one of my specialties, we take out tumors almost completely in many cases. We are able to do this because we go at extremely high zooms, and we are able to see what the others see, a conglomerate of nerves, we see just one nerve.
Okay.
I operate only 4 days a week and 1 case a day. That is a very comfortable space for me, and it's a very comfortable space for my team as well. We operate on these cases using the highest technology. So we have robotics in our theater. We have one of the best intraoperative CTs in the world, which we designed with Siemens. Because the usual intraoperative CT is a CT which comes to your theater while the head is open. That would be like in middle of the surgery, I need to know where one particular part is shifted or where one particular part is. I would do a CT and see how is this. But what we've done is we describe something called hypervision, which means as soon as the CT is done, it is reconstructed in VR. It is injected to my exoscope space, registering into the patient's head. So which means that when I am doing my surgery, I know what is behind my tumor. I see the vessels,
possibilities of technology.
everything, yeah.
You envisioned that this is how you want to do a surgery. This is how much precision you need in the microscope and in your equipment. And you designed and you made it possible.
Yeah.
That's phenomenal. So, but why Kharak? Why do people have to travel there to get this done?
The best treatment for your disease is available in Everest Base Camp. It is least accessible. But it's the best place ever. Wouldn't you go to Everest Base Camp?
For sure.
You would. Everybody would. So it's not just the geographic bias. It's about awareness. We have now one of the largest neurosurgical departments in India. 200 beds. It's completely free.
So anyone who comes to your place and gets surgery?
Yeah, we have the yojanas. So the government pays. That's completely not enough, actually. The government pays very little for it. But we wanted to operate these yojana patients because they are the poorest. And what we did, we brought the world's best OT into Karad. It's a unique combination where we can give the best to the poorest. So none of us, all the 4 professors, none of us charge a single rupee as a professional fee. It's just the salaries. So in our department, no cuts, absolutely no cuts. No professional fees, nothing.
And you're happy with that?
Yes, very happy, because you see these patients who couldn't have survived and they're going back home without any problems. They bring you lemons, they bring you some watermelons or something, but they're happy. We're happy.
So, Iype, how do you describe happiness in neuroscience?
Let's say a brainstem glioma, his parents know he would have been dead. Coming from the other side of the world, like let's say Caribbean, to get operated. They don't have enough money with them. We take care of them. You operate the brainstem glioma. The child is just done well, but he comes back. You're walking into your office and you get a hug from that child whom you thought would have been dead and gone. If not for your expertise, your team, and your infrastructure, that would be one definition of happiness for me.
Is that your dopamine?
Well, my dopamine is a lot of different things, but this is definitely one of them.
Kickboxing is one of them.
Yeah, martial arts, off-roading. I used to do a lot of biking as well, but then I had a tibia fibula type 3B fracture, which was very bad, so I stopped at that. But my dopamine is my meditation as well. So when I shut off from everything and I meditate, that is something that, gives me a lot of happiness too.
What do you meditate on? Your pineal gland?
When I start meditation, you can give it different names, but we'll talk about a little bit about chakras. So for example, the first chakra is Mooladhara. So now Mooladhara is the chakra of lust and also creativity. The problem is most society today consider lust as something that is a taboo. Kama Sutra was written in India, but people laugh at Indians saying that, oh, these guys. But Mooladhara, unless you satisfy Mooladhara, you will never go above that. And the moment...
The root chakra, you're saying the life, the prana goes from...
Yeah, the prana starts from that chakra. So lust is not only for sex, but it's also for food, it's also for money. It's all the greed in the world. It's not bad. If you consider that it is bad, that is a primal life force.
But what about saints who are celibate? How would they have satisfied?
When it comes to Swadhisthana, the same pleasure that you would have from an orgasm or from eating your most favorite food or going in your best, fastest car, you would have that when the prana ascends to Swadhisthana.
So I feel most of the people now, when you say this, are stuck between the root and the sacral chakra.
So you have a lot of very creative and very lustful people and they think it is a wrong thing and so they are stuck.
Okay.
So they're not accepting it. Whenever somebody says it's wrong, you're not accepting it. So that's why we have a diseased society. We have a society itself which is diseased, which says all this is taboo.
What's the impact of it on the brain?
The impact of it would be that you're not ascending through the chakras and understanding the true meaning of life, and therefore living an existence more like an animal. In fact, an animal lives a better existence. Animals are now thought to be much more kinder, which is Vishuddha chakra. So we will go through these chakras now.
Yes, please.
So the Manipura chakra is energy. Then comes Anahata, heart chakra. The heart chakra has two pure emotions. One is sadness and one is joy. Both these emotions, they bring on tears. One of our problems with our society is that once we grow older, we forget how to cry. We forget to shed tears because we believe it's a sign of weakness, or we believe it's a sign of emotional instability. Anybody who cries, an adult who cries, we look at them with, this guy. So the thing is, tears are a way of purifying your inner soul. It's like an internal shower. How much ever you take an external shower, and if your inner soul is dirty, it is sad. So this is Anahata. Anahata lets you clean. And once you are satisfied your lust, once you are energized, once you're clean, then comes Vishuddha. Vishuddha is the chakra of kindness. A lot of people think charity and kindness are the same. And beautiful example is Karna. He was the best archer in Mahabharata. He was cursed by Parashurama, his teacher, saying that you forget everything when you need it. And on the eve, just before the battle with Arjuna, Indra goes in and asks Karna, can I ask you something? Karna said, please. Indra says, can I have your Kavacha and Kundala? Kavacha and Kundala, Karna was born with. So Surya, his father, he didn't know what to say. It's Indra asking him. Karna didn't say a word. He happily took out his sword, cut out his Kavacha, cut his Kundala, and went to Ganga, his mother. And he was washing them of blood. So Ganga came up and he said, are you crazy? You're giving your Kavacha Kundalas to Indra. Tomorrow, you're battling with the best archer on that side. So Karna said, Mother, if I lose, because I'm not good, not because of this Kavacha Kundala. And I am good. I'm confident in what I have, so I can be kind. So when you have supreme confidence that the universe guides you, then you don't need to be mean. You don't need to be unkind.
Like empathy is your superpower.
Yes. So then you can give anything away because you know that there is the universe taking care of you. So that is Vishuddha. And the next chakra is the third eye. It is where your Ida, that is your female energy, your Pingala, your male energy, they are called Shiva and Shakti, and your Sushumna. Sushumna is your central nadi, which connects to the cosmos. These three intertwine. They intertwine in the third eye, which means they change directions. That's amazing because there is no more male, no more female. That is why Shiva is called Ardhanarishwara.
No duality.
No past, no present. No good, no bad. If you look at, there is no tamasic, no sattvic at Ajna. At Ajna, lot of people, we are all going towards sattvic. We always avoid tamasic.
Yes.
The true sense is when you are nirgun nirakar, which means tamasic is as acceptable as sattvic. If you see Shiva's followers, they are ganas, they are rakshasas. So if you see
Aghoras also.
Aghoris, they eat half-burned human bodies.
Yes.
You go to Muktinath and sit with these Aghoris, the kind of energy that they have is a different level. For them, there is no sattvic, tamasic, all this. There's a beautiful story about Shiva on this. So there was a very pious man who sat down in a village and he started meditating and a small garden started growing around him. All exotic, beautiful flowers. And his garden grew, it engulfed the whole village. So the villagers started to, worship him. It grew and someday the villagers started seeing an aura around him. And he also started to think, I'm something. So at that time, Shiva and his Ganas came into the beautiful jungle. Ganas started uprooting all the trees and everything. So this man woke up and he said, can't you see that you are in the wrong place, Shiva? You should not be in this beautiful jungle. So Shiva, as usual, like a child, is naughty. So he went to him. He said, why can't I be here? So he said, I'm so pure. Shiva said, pure? How pure? So this man put out his hand and a knife came in. He cut his finger and 3 sap flowed out. So he was saying, see, I'm so pure. Shiva took his trident, cut a finger, and ash poured out. And not only did ash pour out from his finger, each sweat pore started pouring ash. This man immediately fell at Shiva's feet. When all these energies, the pranas, you ascend through the pranas, the fire of knowledge, it burns your ego, the sense of you being you.
Which is the soul, which is I.
So the fire of knowledge burns through this, comes to Agya and burns everything about you. Suddenly there is no you, only ash remains. And with the ash, there is stillness, the entire cosmos without time and space. And that is Shivoham.
So sometimes I feel I'm stuck here. I cannot open my eyes. I cannot come out of it.
You understand what is Shivoham. That ash that remains, that stillness that remains, when you have no boundaries. Otherwise, you are always, you have a name, the other person has a name, he has a social class, he has a religion, he has a country, he has so many things. So you differentiate them by these. All this differentiation die. There's no more man and woman, no more classes, no more past, future, no more good, bad. Everything dies.
So if this is spiritual neuroscience,
Yeah.
how are you balancing between being a spiritual person and being a neurosurgeon and a neuroscientist?
The moment you get out to the world, you're in the water. That is the world. And when you meditate, it's like a boat in a sea. The boat is in the water, but the water is not in the boat. You see, that's a time when you can meditate. You get out from the normal things that happen, Otherwise, I get upset, I get angry, I get into all kinds of emotions. I try every evening to sit down quietly and I come back out of that. So that I don't continue to be self which was in the world to be continued. No, I come back to what it was like zero. I come back to be a child, as stupid and foolish and naive as I can be, then go back next day again.
But as human beings, we're all so driven by emotions which come because of situations and because of the environment and the people that we are faced with. As a neurosurgeon, do you have hacks which people can use if they feel stuck in a certain mode?
For example, if I am doing a very difficult surgery, for me, that is what I can relate to. These are surgeries where most people say no to these surgeries and I have to do something which is technically very, very difficult. And if I fail, I have a very bad or a dead patient. So that's something that weighs very heavily onto you. And for about initial times when I used to take up this kind of surgery, it's difficult to sleep. Sometimes after you had a bad result, it's difficult to sleep after surgery. So the best thing when you get stuck is to understand that you're a witness. Imagine your life happening and you stay on that glass completely with your hands folded, watching what's happening. And if you're watching, suddenly you are out of this movie because otherwise you are in this movie and all your emotions are playing around. And this is what gets you into vinashakale vibrita buddhi kind of thing. The moment you're watching, you become a witness, then you know what to do. Because in the movie you will say, this person should do that. But that person doesn't see it because he's inside. It's like being in a maze. If you are in a maze, you don't see the path, which path to go. But you're standing on top of the maze, you know where the door is.
Yes.
So that's the answer, to get disengaged. Sometimes it's not easy. If you ask for a hack, the first thing would be to learn to disengage. In the evenings when you go, you sit down, disengage. So
have a good wind down routine.
Yeah.
Away from screens and gadgets and
away from everything.
Detach for a while, every day.
Yeah.
That's the best advice I heard, obviously. And I'm sure if it's working for you, it will work for everyone.
Yes, it will work for everyone. Mine are very simple hacks because I don't like anything complex. I told you, a lot of people ask me why I became a neurosurgeon. I told them, it's just because I can draw with both hands. People think about very noble things, but it's just because...
And I think you being ambidextrous has helped you since childhood and now to becoming one of the best neurosurgeons in the world. So can you show me a little bit of how and what it looks like to be ambidextrous?
Generally, you are thought to be dominant on your left side. In Vellore, we had to do some tests with the neuropsych people, and I was thought to be right-brained. After the test revealed me to be right-brained. I don't believe being right-brained or left-brained, but I can show you what we can do. Let us start a drawing. So on both sides. So the eyes. And most people can do these kind of drawings because if you can train to be ambidextrous, your brain can train to be ambidextrous. So this is something, this is something you can do. But other than that, you could write A, B, C, D.
That's what they call autism.
Yeah. See, autism is probably sometimes not a bad diagnosis.
Getting your perspective on autism is nice. I would love to know, if you've seen how we've treated children, and Tare Zameen Par is another movie which is an example of how treated by his parents as someone who has a disease.
Yeah,
But you as one of the best neurosurgeons in the world is doing this and saying this is what helps me do my surgeries better.
When you don't fit into a society, you are a misfit. Like when you cannot follow what the society wants, then you're a misfit. I mean, your intellectual capabilities has to cater to the society at large. The thing is, what I say is, I am probably if you look at my emotional quotient or many other things to perform to stay within a society, they're very poor. So you ask me whether I'm autistic, I don't know. But on the other hand, I can probably do a few things better than the normal society, what they do. And that's helped me in my profession a lot, because being ambidextrous, having my hand to work independently from the other hand, so much so that it's an assistant to one hand, it helps me a lot.
I really want to understand why two people cannot work on the same machine.
You really have two brains. You have really two people within you. Schizophrenia, more than a disease, it's a reality for everybody. But what saves the situation is a group of fibers called the corpus callosum. And what corpus callosum does is connect the two brains together. And when it connects two brains together, one automatically becomes a dominant hemisphere and the other non-dominant. Although you call it dominant and non-dominant, they're just holding like that,
And the neural networks are...
You have commissures like the corpus callosum firing in both sides and bringing information from both sides, fusing it together, processing it together.
Your logical and the emotional brain.
This is more of it's a cliche. When you don't understand something, you try to explain it in a way that you understand, isn't it? So the brain is not really logical and non-logical. It is just
so
that...
we are only talking physiological now.
I mean, if you ask me what is my perspective on the brain is a hardware and it's a receiver. Now, how a receiver? I'll tell you. The brain's got 100,000 neurons, as much as stars are there in the sky. Do you know, if you work the whole brain, there's no supercomputer which can ever think of keeping up. Because the brain doesn't work in binary computing, it works in quantum computing. In fact, it can make more connections when you demand it. That's why a chess player can play 150 people blindfold and still remember each chess set he can remember, and all the moves that are being made in the chess set you can remember.
Oh, I love what we're talking in the AI era.
Yeah, people talk about singularity and AI beating humans. This is never going to happen. A lot of Elon Musk and other people talking about singularity and AI overtaking humans. It's going to happen only if the humans are the state they are.
But we are evolving.
Yes, but the thing is, the humans are designed to be much, much more than we are actually. For example, if you take any fish, keep it in a place where there is blue color and the fish has to escape from a predator by becoming blue, these are called epigenetic mutations. They're not really changing DNA, but they can adapt. It is not because the fish sees the blue and the fish, it's because the nature sees it and the nature puts a switch on and it's changing. So the nature itself has an eye.
How does it make sense in cancer cells?
That's beautiful when you ask me this question because, for example, GBM, the most common brain cancer, it is designed to kill the host.
Okay.
Which means the GBM happens only after a particular set of mutations have already happened. Once the GBM manifests, then no amount of chemotherapy, no amount of surgery, no amount of radiotherapy can do anything to the GBM.
Why is nature doing this? And why are there miracles in stage 4 of cancer then? Why is GBM getting deactivated then?
Your brain can heal anything that the nature throws at you. The nature doesn't have anything classified as good or bad. So the GBM survival for it is as important as the host survival. Because the nature doesn't consider you to be surviving like you, the GBM also is its child. Can you imagine when there is equality for the nature is so equal, the cancer cell, it's also its child.
So it's like two children fighting against each other.
Yeah, so one is designed to win.
Death can win.
If you look at the Vedic way of looking at death, what is death?
Moving to another realm.
Yeah, so I got up from that chair and I moved out to that room. You wouldn't consider that as death, right? That's exactly what you're doing when you're dying.
But what decides whether I'm in a better place?
You always have been, will be in a better place. Only thing is you have to open your eyes to see that you are in that place. When you close your eyes and you imagine all kinds of things, let's say you are sitting in your mother's lap, but you close your eyes and you're hearing all the sounds, you're listening to your senses and you're getting frightened. All you have to do is open your eyes. Moment you open your eyes, you know you are in some place safe.
So when you're attaching yourself to everything materialistic and you stop that and you'll start looking within, are you telling me that that's what is the neuroscience?
If you look at the evolution of the brain that produces all your thoughts, where it can evolve from? Even a cell, even a nail cell. You take a nail, clone it, and you will have a human being. So the entire brain's information is there in a cell, in a nail cell. Can you imagine this? If you see Fibonacci, it is 1, 2, 3, then 2 and 3, 5, then 5 and 3, 8, then 8 and 5, 13. So you take that Fibonacci. And you look at the Fibonacci, you'll get the branching of your arteries, branching on these, the veins of the leaf, branching of every river, clouds.
Quite evident when you see the nature, it's almost the same branching.
Most complex fractals are made from the most simple patterns repeating itself over itself in different ways.
So someone can deal with their cancer cells.
Yes, actually, if you look at it the right way, if you look at it to fry it with chemotherapy or radiotherapy or different things, you're not looking at the right perspective.
So can doctors like you cure it with a placebo effect? Can you be like, take this magic pill and you'll be cured of cancer, and does that work for people?
I don't know. I mean,
how do you tweak the thought? How do you tweak the brain? Like how can you stop? Like I have dreams where most of the days my dreams are about snakes, and I've had this since I was born. And now I'm at a point in life where I start connecting with snakes and I start resonating with them. I started visualizing myself as a snake in my past birth, so much so that I have a tattoo of a snake on my back. How do you interpret the neuroscience of dreams, and how can you stop a person from correlating and relating to not having cancer when they have cancer inside their body and when they have to go through so much of difficulty and turmoil with what's going to happen with their career or future, or sometimes the whole family is dependent on that person probably, and how can they overcome the non-thinking state and come to a positive state, what happens in the brain?
Dreams happen from your subconscious mind. Now, what you think in your conscious mind always leaves a residue, okay, in your subconscious mind. So what you dream is always about your relatives, about your people you know. You don't dream about people you completely don't know, right? So you dream about your family, you dream about your car. You don't dream about a car which is totally not yours. It's because that means that the conscious mind leaves a residue on your subconscious, and when you sleep, that plays out. But it's a completely different subconscious mind going, wreaking havoc. Okay, that's how it is. So the moment you change your conscious mind thinking process, which is in your subconscious mind, will also change. So moment you start focusing on happiness, focusing on truth, focusing on being childlike, then your dreams will also change. Now, can you cure cancer? I think everybody can, because you don't need a doctor to do that. It's just that you need to visualize and order, just like you order your hand. Like my brain orders my hand to go to this, right? The same way I could order my cells, kill all the cancer cells. I could just order it. You understand? So it's the same way that I order my hand consciously. Supposing, who is a paralyzed person? This connection is lost. So my hands muscles are okay, but since the connection is lost, it suddenly becomes so effortless. The same way, to yourselves, you could really order. There are saints who can raise their body temperature, bring down their heart rate. All this is documented. I believe that at some point of time, people will come to that state of awareness that you could just stop the cancer. But then that awareness also has to be that you must understand when is your time going to finish, and you could just, go into samadhi as well.
Yeah, people have done that too.
Yeah.
So you've been in Nepal for 14 years. Know of any such people who can levitate?
I did not find anybody who could levitate, but when I went to Muktinath, it was snow all around. And you have these 108 dharas, and dharas are so cold that, torture going through those dharas. You come down, on one side, you have a guy sitting and taking a cool bath. 80-year-old guy. So I was surprised, and I went and asked him, don't you feel cold? He said, I've lived my life here. In the night, I asked him whether you have a lodge or something. He says, no, I stay nearby the temple. And I went to the place that he stayed, and there's not even a shelter. So he was sleeping in that. I mean, you would think he would die from the cold. I mean, there's no secret to be cracked, but there is something that you have to be amazed seeing that. Then you kind of understand what the human body is capable of if you visualize. You think people will die of cold, but actually you can train your body to be in sub-zero temperatures, and yet, your body can survive that.
I did the Chadar trek once in Ladakh, and I froze like 5 days, was trekking on ice at -15, -20 every single day. And there was rain one day and snow one day. And I literally remember telling this group that never call me again for these minus temperatures, because I can't even get rid of my gloves once, for even 2 seconds, because my hands would turn blue.
No, you can. It's just that you have a mental limitation.
But I can get into a cold plunge of 4 degrees. I can get into a cryotherapy of -120. But I don't know how that works.
One of the most beautiful experiments of magic was that a French magician, what he did was, there was this stage, and he said, can somebody come up the stage? So they said yes. Everybody is watching. So one woman went up. She said, you cannot hypnotize me. He said, fine, no problem. In the center, there are some steps. We go down the steps. So she said, fine. So she held his hand and went down. And at the end of the steps, there was a small room. So the magician asked her, can you please enter the room? So she said yes. So the magician opened a heavy door. And as soon as he entered, the door closed and out. The magician came back. So this lady is banging and banging. Nobody. So for 5 minutes after this, the lady panicked. She started throwing herself onto the door. After some time, she started crying. She started, she was saying she was I mean, I must have done some sins or something, and now I'm locked in here. That magician has gone off. Everybody will forget me, and so on and so forth. After 5 minutes, the magician said, come out. The hand just came through the wall, and she held the hand, and she could just walk out through the walls. So when she came out, what she realized was there was no room. There were no steps. There was no doors. She was doing everything on the stage. Everybody saw her. The magician just made her believe that there were steps, there were rooms. It's exactly our life, Children, you cannot hypnotize them like that. It's impossible because they will never form an impression like that. They don't know it's not possible to walk through the wall. They'll just walk through the wall. For us, a wall means a wall. That's a problem.
That we built.
So the moment we come out of that mentality and understand none of these walls exist, that's when we'll be happy. That's when we can live life fully. That's when we can heal one another,
It just makes me believe in life a lot more. Let's close this with a few tips that we can give people. Is it a good thing to be a multitasker?
Multitasking is not a bad thing, but it brings the details down. If I'm seeing this leaf and I'm fully focused onto this, I see the whole beauty of the leaf. But when I'm on the phone talking to somebody and I look at the leaf, I just see the green outline. This is the difference when you multitask. The same with relations. For example, you're talking to your son or your daughter. They're just answering all your questions, but they're on the phone. Would you like it? You wouldn't, because you know that they're missing out. They're missing out on you, you're missing out on them. It's because the details are not present. So they say sometimes God is in the details or devil is in the details. But we are in a culture where we have subscribed to YouTube shorts, where everything is so short and the result is so fast. We don't believe in anything more long because we believe it's a waste of time. The problem is we miss the details. So if you just want a job done, maybe yes, but if you want to understand the details of a relationship, details of driving, details of art, then I think you should not multitask because you're compromising.
How I can help myself to live longer and happier and better, because I have this bug of getting my DNA test done, which I get once every 3 months. And the last time I got one, my longevity physician said that I would probably end up having Alzheimer's. So is there a way to not get Alzheimer's? Is there a way to train my reflexes?
How do I become stronger? I stress my body to do 100 push-ups. If I can only do 50, I do 100. So next day, I can do 105. So I am doing it, not thinking it as a punishment, but I'm stressing it so much so that my body is getting geared for that. So when my body gets geared, my telomeres shortening stops. My genes start adapting to it. So you train it with real stress, real exercise, real stretch, then it starts decelerating with its aging. Aging is universal because we have to get out of space-time at some point of life.
Yes.
It's only fair that we're trapped in space-time, we have to get out of space-time. It's something designed for your own good. But if you want to decelerate it and enjoy life as much as you can, then I think you should put stress into your mind. I mean, start solving problems, start seeing documentaries, start seeing the details about animals, instead of putting your mind into, things which are not very helpful. So if you learn about animals, for example, Japanese pufferfish, which draws Ashoka chakra on the floor.
That. Yes.
You know why it does that? Semantics is the sound of music transformed into a pattern. For example, when you say Om, the semantics is a six-pointed star, Sri Yantra. Every note has a semantic pattern. Ancient people could see the semantics. Now people think of it as only drugs can get you to do that. But this is an ability you have. If you are able to do that, semantics, the Japanese pufferfish, why does it that beautiful Ashoka chakra? Ashoka chakra is a mandala or a yantra. A yantra is actually a pattern of the mantra. So I told you about the sound of universe that Shiva dances to. The sound of universe is what it drew.
Oh.
Do you know that every tree has a sound?
Yeah.
The brain has a sound. Every brain has a sound. And the brain sound is not in your hearing range, because your hearing range, one particular frequency to another frequency, if it is lesser than that, you call it infrasonic. And if it's more than that, you call it ultrasonic. Most of the dogs, they can hear infrasonic. That's why you have a dog whistle, which is no sound, but the dogs come running to you. Your brain sound is infrasonic, but if you take that brain sound and transpose it to the sound that you can hear, what is the sound? The sea sound. That is why you go to a seashore, you lie down, you go to sleep right off.
And I listen to the ocean waves as sleep music.
Yeah, that is because it's the same sound as your brain. So these are some interesting things that instead of multitasking, I'm sure you'd start enjoying life more. Rather than doing more and enjoying less, you will do less but enjoy more.
Yeah. I can be more.
Yeah, you can be more.
So what are the kind of cases that you mostly deal with, which is your niche, which we can emphasize upon, which might help the people who are listening to this?
So I do mostly skull base. These are tumors at the base of the brain. Then I do aneurysms. And I also do stroke, which is bypass. After addressing trauma, stroke is the next biggest problem in the world. So with strokes, people have to realize that with an incomplete stroke, you've lost one part of the brain, but 8 times larger that part, it's called the penumbra. That penumbra is still ready to be functional if you just bypass. If you give another supply to that, it's ready to be functional. But if you don't bypass, what happens is that entire area is not functioning because the blood flow there is not in the level that it should function. So we're trying to do this penumbra salvage by bypassing selected patients. My message to these people would be that once it's an incomplete stroke, then I guess they should get a angio done. If they are eligible for a bypass, they should, and it will change their lives.
With someone like you as physician, obviously.
Yeah, so we are teaching this to the whole world, how to do the bypass. Yasagil started bypass 50 years back, but went out of favor because of some flawed studies. We are reinvigorating it with ultra micro neurosurgery.
It's really nice to, have this conversation. And like you just said, I feel like I'm doing this with so much purpose. And this is really the time that I spend without any other screen or anything else in my head. And I'm so focused and so hooked on to learning.
I'm sure we all learn from each other.
So any thoughts that you want to leave us with?
Steve Jobs once said, stay hungry, stay foolish. Both are fantastic because staying hungry, it takes care of probably half your diseases, and staying foolish gets your eye opened to all possibilities. So I think that would be the thought that I would part.
And you're living both of them, I know that.
Yeah,
with your adventure where you travel across. Does that change anything in your brain? Like if you have to cliff dive, why would that influence your brain and how?
We do a lot of crazy things, but that's crazy only for the present set of people. It is probably something that if I had not done, I wouldn't have that part of my memories. I wouldn't be able to tell my kids that, go ahead, do it. It's not dangerous as you think it is. Adventure is something that opens your mind, Well, there is risk in everything. They say the guy who jumped Niagara in a barrel and survived, he slipped on a banana peel, fell down and died, So you should do things. You should, be ready to jump into the abyss, and you probably will land on a soft patch of grass instead of always worrying about, the rocks and the hurt. You should always do things.
So fearlessness.
Fearlessness, yeah.
And staying hungry, I know you eat just your breakfast and your dinner and you don't eat lunch.
For a long time. It's probably because I'm a surgeon, and if I want to have a lunch, that will spoil my mood, because if I don't have my lunch, so I'm so used to, for years I'm so used to not having lunch. So I don't even, if I'm not operating, I don't feel like having it.
And because of the ultra microscopy that you do, you cannot have any stimulants like even coffee or tea.
Yeah, so coffee has caffeine and tea has theobromine. Both are mild stimulants. They can produce very minor tremor. For example, yesterday what we were doing an anastomose in a 0.6 millimeter vessel. So if you have a tremor and you're doing it at zooms of over 50. So one minor tremor can magnify into 50 times and it'll be like your hand is, going that way. So you cannot do that. Well, there are people who take coffee, take alcohol and do it. But I'd rather that I be my best at that. It's not like I love coffee, I love tea, I love alcohol, but I wouldn't want to have it because as long as I'm in surgery, I would have to do my best.
Out of all the things, I just would like to tell you, Doctor, that I feel extremely grateful, not only neuroscientists, but also spiritual beings in the world, because everything that you said and the way you correlated has just opened up so many dimensions in me, and I will keep all of them in my mind and I will practice them. Thank you so much for coming all the way, and I think we should continue doing this.
Yes, I am very honored. I'm also very happy that I could share this much. Thank you.
Thank you.